Hello, hello. This is Biweeklycast. This is episode number 56. The host is still the same, even though you may have not heard from us for a long time. I'm Dima.
I'm Slava. And today we're going to talk about spreadsheet mentality, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit of psychoanalysis, I guess. Sort of, maybe. I don't know.
We'll see.
It may come through like that from the title. I don't think I have any follow-ups this time around. I hope to be back with follow-ups next time. We'll see how it goes.
Take your time.
Yeah, I think I kind of expect follow-ups because even thinking about this topic, I threw quite a bit of stuff out because I thought, no, that would be too much. It is connected, but loosely connected to the topic. Yeah, probably there would be something up afterwards.
Before we go to the initial topic, there is a theme corner. And since it's your episode, we should ask you for some updates. How are your themes going?
Right. I think the last time we talked about themes was before the year started or something along those lines, because I don't recall talking about my current thinking about themes recently. And yeah, so not sure how much of an update that's going to be. I think I started this year with no topic, just a little bit of inertia from past year. And then I thought that one thing that I keep coming back to, that I feel sort of bites me in the rear end every once in a while, and I don't like it, is that idea that a lot of what I do and how I sort of perceive myself is related to my professional activities. So like the work related professional stuff always is at the top, and at the top, even kind of in an unhealthy kind of way, that it eats into some of the other parts of my, not say personality, but maybe how do I say it? Part of what I think of myself. Like I'm also think of myself.
Identity?
Identity. And I felt like every once in a while I find myself in a situation that when I look back, I see that I sacrifice some of the other stuff to do more work-related professional stuff. At those moments, I don't like it. I want to change it a little bit. And that brought me to this idea of what I call decoupling, kind of to make a conscious effort to disconnect who I am from just my professional activities and invest more time, more energy into other stuff. But I tried that a couple of times previously, but it was a mixed bag of success and sort of failure. And now I'm thinking like, no, like in order to invest something into something else, I need to first get those funds or whatever it might be that could be invested. And that means kind of stepping back a little bit from work-related activities. And the word that I chose to denote this is decoupling, like decouple myself from that part of identity a little bit more to build other parts of identity a little bit better.
That sounds like a massive theme. Like, is it a season or a year or something?
That is a great question and very keen observation. I started it thinking, usually, how hard could it be? I'll made some tweaks to some of my habits.
Let's make it a week.
That probably would put me on the right track, and I will take it from there and kind of build on the hopefully success of that thing. I didn't realize how wrong I was thinking that, and yeah, probably it's going to be a longer thing. We are almost at the end of, well, no, yes, or yes, no. It's a little bit broken, right? With year starts in the middle of winter and seasons are sort of broken this way.
My year starts in September. I mean, my yearly themes start in September, so seasons are fine for me.
That's helpful, but yeah, you're right. And now I'm thinking to this. Oh, this is a more complicated thing, and I probably need more time to give it justice.
Yeah, I think you could name it something like whatever of decoupling, like Ukrainian alliance, whatever it takes, however long it's going to last.
Yeah, but what do we say about smart goals and kind of setting
Not the
targets,
theme.
time boxing, and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, but I mean, it's the scale of the intention. Like when I think of my themes in terms of 3 years, 1 year in season, it's just different level of complexity.
Yep, that's fair. So that probably would be a longer thing. But this is definitely a thing. Like even when I thought of this being kind of a seasonal thing, and we are coming to an end of season, I think like what could be next thing, and like no, this is still kind of worthy endeavor. Like I'm not sort of done here. Don't feel like I'm done here. I need to continue.
In the theme system journal, they suggest writing some success criteria when you pick something. What would be your top 3 to 5 things that you know that it worked?
3 to 5 is kind of a lot. Like 3 is okay. 2 5, I think is.
Yeah, I had to say
probably
3 to 5 so you would feel comfortable with 3. If I just say 3, you will say, oh, no, 3 is too many.
Yeah, that's definitely what I would have said, right? Yeah, I think just being regularly kind of with those identities like photography and some other stuff, kind of regularly being out in the world in that identity, because like now I feel like for some of the things I think of myself as like X or like a photographer, or I don't know what's the better word, like enthusiast of kind of complexity theory and chaos related things. Who knows about that? Maybe it's a little bit visible that I do take pictures every once in a while, but a little bit. But that other part of doing a little bit of research and kind of trying to better understand how things work in complex systems and what are the implications of that, probably nobody knows about that except for
Unless you have a
people.
hidden blog somewhere.
Right, except for those people who I discuss this in when it comes up in professional setting of all things. So the success would be that there is visible this part of my identity is sort of visible outside
Right, let's say
myself.
10 people out of work know about this. Is it a success or not?
It would be success-ish, I guess.
Success-ish.
It would be directionally successful. Can we put it this way?
Yeah, I think if we manage to publish this podcast, you'll achieve it.
Well, it would not be systematic. I think regular is important part of how I think about this. Like doing something once and patting myself on the back, I don't think is going to be sufficient, because I know that previously it was not sufficient to establish that as a kind of habit or something along those lines.
Okay, it's fair. So not a single episode, but maybe a biweekly special.
So if I do one more follow-up on this, that that would be a success.
Sure.
Nice.
So some people know you talk about it on a regular basis. It's not directly linked to just people you work with. You could do it in a week. Absolutely.
I could. Yes. You're right. Yes. Are you shaming me now into not making
I'm
much
asking
progress
whether it's next week or the week after next. In the best procrastinators practice.
Yeah. That part of that is a part of challenge, procrastination and perfectionism.
Does social commitment work here? Like if you announce something like you did with this challenge of weather photos for a year?
No, I don't know. I think initially it worked on me, but maybe now I feel myself in a state where I have so much going on that I somehow it's kind of it's sort of bad that I'm saying that, but it feels kind of internally like I have so many things. It's only natural that I maybe miss some of the things, even if there is some sort of a commitment. You know what I'm trying to say? Like when there is too much commitment, it kind of devalues each individual commitment. So if you, let's say, like speaking of spreadsheet mentality, right? You make one commitment and you fail on it, like that sort of feels like a big thing. You fail on 100% of your metric. If you have 20 commitments and you fail on 2, you are 90% successful. It's great stuff.
Fair enough.
So it feels to me like the dynamics of how those social commitments work on me this time around feels more like the latter example, and I don't like it, and therefore I'd rather not make commitments, not to break them. I need to scale down on that.
Well, I can suggest an easy way out.
Okay, yeah, I'm all like easy is all I'm in for.
There is an already working track of Biweekly. Like we do post regularly, relatively regularly. And there is a section of your episodes where you can bring any topic you'd like. Why not commit within Biweekly that your next 3 episodes are going to be related to something? Like this track is already going, like it's part of your life. You spend time on it. Just refocus it for a little while and see how it goes.
You do possess the power of reframing situations and kind of taking in bigger perspective and laying it out in a way that makes a lot of sense. Yes, and that also makes me think. I'll need to take probably tonight to take my journal and think about this, because this can be an example of this identity sort of crisis. Is not the right word, but an identity discombobulation a little bit, because this what you just said makes a lot of sense, and this not occurring to me be a sign that, like, well, I'm thinking of myself as a kind of in this podcast, we are discussing kind of specific set of topics, and that's what the identity or persona here is. And it doesn't even occur to me that can be extended. That's not about us discussing these specific topics. It's just about us discussing, and we bring whatever is interesting for us. And if I don't know, like migration of bees is the interesting topic for today, like why not talk about this?
Moreover, it's reusable. Then you can use this episode to throw it to a group of people and discuss the episode with them, so they can already know your thoughts and have a discussion around that as well.
Right. I need to take a break to create more mind space.
It was a nice episode.
Right.
See,
Yes.
see you in 2 weeks.
That's a success. I call it a success for this week. No, really. This is so super helpful. And recently at work we had weird thing called kind of offsite, but it happened on site, and like so it was offsite in a spirit, right? Like a large blob of time dedicated to kind of bringing people together, sharing what they're working on, and all of those good things. And I was on the panel. There was a panel discussion about kind of how to be successful and kind of build successful career and so on. That there were questions which were shared ahead of time, being me kind of prepared for them a little bit. And that there was one element which I didn't get to use in the conversation because it was not kind of timely, or sort of it didn't fit into how the thread of the discussion went there. But there was a question: what are the kind of habits or things to, it's kind of fighting kind of stress and burnout if you are thinking about, oh, I need to get a promotion and stuff like that. And one of the things I wanted to share there was, you need to talk to people. Just talk to people. Don't kind of burn on your own. Talk to people. It helps. You would get better ideas about how to get where you want to get. You will see or feel that the world isn't as bad or isn't in an as dire state as it might seem. I didn't get to use it, but this conversation that we are having is a great example of power of that thing.
Yeah, that's why I appreciate our episodes so much, because whenever I come with an idea that seems like a dead end, after our conversation, it gets some options and ways out.
Totally.
So that should sound like it for the theme corner. Shall we try the topic?
It would be great if I could come up with notes for this episode in a spreadsheet. It didn't occur to me only now. I'm thinking of this witty thing, but the idea where this is coming from is that in recent times, but in general, I observed a number of situations where people make decisions or put forward rationales that are based on metrics and something that's measurable. And then that leads to them or us together with them making suboptimal decisions that sort of prioritize some elusive short-term wins, which may be even entirely illusory. We constructed kind of some sort of metric, we smashed it, and then what has changed in the real world because of that? Yeah, not much. We improved something from 0% to 80%, but it is so either artificial or something like that. So it doesn't have much bearing on what happens in the real world. Through that, we kind of miss opportunities to build for longer term success that is more sustainable and gets us further in the end. And I've been thinking about this kind of situations for a long time. I think that generally it is referred to as like I put in the title, a spreadsheet mentality, where we kind of overemphasize what can be measured and optimized for it, missing other parts of the equation.
Can I give a few examples and you'll tell me whether they illustrate or don't illustrate this kind of thing?
Cool.
Saying we run A/B test and let the results decide instead of us what you're going to do. Like this test shows this, that's what we are going to do, without actually looking at the long term. Like we run something, we see the results, and we jump straight to that path without estimating whether it's the right thing or not.
Your first example is already a complicated one. I think the A/B test itself is not an example of kind of spreadsheet mentality. It would be an example of that if we set the target metric that we optimize for in an A/B test in a specific way, and we maybe do not consider additional objections to that or discard them because they are not measured. Let's say, I don't know, we do something, we do A/B test that makes it more difficult for people to unsubscribe from our service. And if the revenue is the only thing that we are tracking and we optimize for that, that would be an example of a little bit of a spreadsheet.
Okay, let's try the second one. You would like to improve the level of happiness and engagement in your team. Mm-hmm. The only way to measure it, is ENPS. It's a question whether you would recommend your company or team to anyone, to your friends. Mm-hmm. And that's what HRs usually do when it comes to happiness and satisfaction of employees. And then you start working on improving the number of the answer to this question, sometimes losing the track of why you actually started all this thing, because this is something that can be measured. There is this question in the questionnaire, and mm-hmm. its current status, how to improve it, but you lose the initial impulse why you actually started thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that would be this whole situation, not the metric itself, but this whole situation would be a poster child of spreadsheet mentality, where we lose track of why we started doing something, and then we optimize solely for the number without paying attention to why are we doing that? Is what we're doing even bringing us closer to the original goal?
Example 3, you would like to pivot your team or project somewhere, and you don't really know where exactly for now. Your assumption is that you need to test whatever many assumptions or hypotheses. And 1 year later, you're focusing on creating new hypotheses and assumptions without actually remembering why you started this at the very first time. You turn into an R&D experimental lab instead of actually finding this new product, because right now you're focusing on the experiments, on getting the data, on forming as many assumptions, brainstorming, checking, and you lose the final end because your key metric is the number of checked assumptions.
Yes, I think this would also be an example, or it would be something that falls under the broader umbrella of spreadsheet mentality. I get that your second example, I think, probably is the epitome of what is typically referred to as a spreadsheet mentality. But then there are other flavors, like the one that you described, where we substitute actual work or actual progress. We substitute it for seeking for the metric or kind of the measurement that would justify us doing something in some particular way, or the measurement becomes the goal in and of itself instead of, like, once again substituting the actual progress towards something meaningful in the real.
Would you suggest an example or two from your side to make it a bit more tangible?
Yes. Oh, I should have thought of this. Like on. I need to, now I start sweating and then trying to figure out how to buy myself a little bit more time to think of
Well, luckily it's a
examples.
post-production show, so you can just pause and think.
Right. Maybe not. But I think one of the examples that on the bigger scale, that I usually give to kind of articulate this kind of idea is the success of Apple with their iPhones, where initially the analytics and business analysts and stuff, folks were saying that no, Android is going to win because it's modular, the devices are going to be kind of cheaper, and that there were a whole bunch of numerical metrics that suggested that Android phones are superior to iPhone in those regards. But there were some others who were saying that no, like Apple and iPhone are going to be fine because user experience means a lot. You're not measuring it. It's like super difficult to measure that. But this is what's going to carry iPhone through, even if on other metrics like the price of the devices or something else, they're not kind of as quote unquote great as the iPhone. So we are over indexed. There folks over indexed on what can be measured and discarded what things that are difficult or cannot be measured, and that led them to building a wrong picture of what's going on.
Could I clarify, when you say measured, you mean quantified, right?
Quantified. Sorry. Yep. Yeah. Yep. You should also maybe kind of mentally correct my notes, because now I realize that a lot of times there, when I use the
unmeasurable,
measured,
you mean like
it's quantified. Yeah,
is not quantifiable.
it's quantified. Another example could be like just targeting on the number of bugs in software. It's like, yeah, we want number of bugs to be kind of zero or something like that, and then it can lead to very perverse effects of people not filing bugs because they don't want to screw up the metrics. We say, let's do this back channel about this bug, let's get it fixed, but let's not file it or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there is there is a target to let's say like support cases, we want to close them within a certain time. And if an agent gets a case that is more complex and they see, oh, it will be tough to do it within the allocated time, let's throw it to a different agent, creating a worse customer experience that would otherwise be possible. Like
maybe it's also a side effect. As a side effect here, I remember our conversation with a co-founder of Uklon, which is a competitor of Uber in Ukraine. And he mentioned that after working with a quantifiable, like numbered measurements for a little while, in their case, it was the uptime. They were focusing on uptime for half a year. When they reached it, it was time to actually get to some quality goals and quality points. And it was really hard for people to switch back. Like, all right, now it's not about numbers. Now we have to do some things that are just like we can or we can't see that. Something that can be measured by deeper interviews or by observations or by some other things, not just the KPIs or specific data.
Right. And I think oftentimes it would require, like you said, like personal judgment, like someone going in, looking at the case and judging, like, is it good or bad? We cannot like put some sort of spectrometer to this thing and get the number and then.
All right. I think I got the grasp of what you mean by spreadsheet mentality now.
So the question would be like, well, you gave examples, so maybe you came across situations where this was pronounced. Would that be a true statement? Like, have you come across anything like that recently?
Quite often, I'd say it's just the type of managers who prefer. It's like a cult of data-driven decisions, and when the decision is not data-driven, they can't trust it anyway. even if it's intuitive, it feels right to everyone, but there is no data supporting it, they would sabotage or ignore or wait or experiment or hesitate or do something before some data appears. So I would say that I can see it a lot at strategic sessions that I facilitate, that there are some people who have the vision and the intuition that something is right. They can't articulate it or back it up with numbers. And this decision that just doesn't go through because the vast majority of managers are very data focused and they can't move on without this backup.
Right. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that rubs me the wrong way so much when I come across it. Indeed, like at times we can be paralyzed. To an extent, it often feels like we just don't trust ourselves. Like what's wrong with it? Like if I believe that this is the right way of doing stuff, why do I need to be backed up by some sort of number to move forward with it? And yeah, that's maybe a little bit of a lack of a leadership in a classical sense, like saying, no, I believe that this is the way to go, let's go for it, and then be accountable for it. And if this is turns out to be wrong somehow, we say that no, yeah, that was a mistake, let's try better next time.
Yeah, I think it's very relatable to people who work in big organizations where it's part of their identity to manage risks and they work on safety rather than on innovations or creativity. Their task is basically to back things up and slow things down reasonably, but sometimes this reasonability just disappears and they slow things down to slow things down.
I think also there is another manifestation of the similar, not the similar problem, like where this attitude creates the problem is that sometimes like there are things that are easy to measure or quantify, there are things that are difficult to quantify, even if they are quantifiable. And kind of hanging the start of a project on measuring something can, like, we can spend a lot of time getting to the measure to justify that thing that would take even longer than doing the actual thing. And at times it could be more practical and pragmatic to just do this, then measure and see if we were successful. And if we were not, or like it didn't yield the results we wanted, do something else. On the bigger scale, you can get 2 tries to do something as opposed to just trying to measure, analyze, and do something just once.
There is one example that came across while I was looking at your video. The shirt you're wearing is from Cortex Merge. And I think that CGP Grey is an example of a person who is trying to apply spreadsheet mentality to the way they run orders these days. And it doesn't work. Like he tried numerous approaches and ways how to predict the demand on some of their products, especially new products. But sometimes you have to just guess and trust your guts. And in certain ways, you can be brave or you can feel safe, but you can't predict because, all right, they have never sold this type of notepad. Like they don't know how popular it's going to be. They might see some other references of other products, but like that's always intuitive when you have limited data. You can try with 5 notepads and you will sell them and that would be 100% sold. But what if you got 500? What if you got 5,000? What if you got 50,000? Sold all of them, but you didn't because you were going like very steadily and experimenting super carefully.
I think that this is a great example of another sort of fallacy of the data-driven approach. I said it and I don't like it because like it's not a critique of data-driven approach. It's great if we can get useful data and use it to inform our decisions. The challenge is that it's not always sort of possible. We may not get the useful data. The data we get, we don't know how useful it is, and kind of all this shebang. But this example with predicting the amount of orders that need to be made, I think that there are ways to navigate that if we are a little bit more open-minded. Because what Gray, I think, well, I'm this pure speculation because you may be referring to recent episodes of Cortex which I haven't listened to. So the only thing I know about the situation is what you just described. So
that's okay.
massively extrapolating and speculating. One way to approach this kind of problem could be, how do we maximize our profit? And the way to maximize our profit is to guess number of orders perfectly so that we sell everything. That means that we do not get overhead of something that we procured but were not able to sell. And also we do not lose on the missed sales opportunities. That's the perfect variant. Of course, it would be great to know all of that ahead of time. And it's kind of super difficult for mathematical reasons of all things. But then alternative could be what amount of sales we would be happy with. Like, let's say we sell like 10,000 of those things. Then we think, like, would we be able to sell 10, like realistically, would we be able to sell 10,000 of those things? It's like, yeah, maybe yes. Maybe the potential of the market is 50,000 and we are thinking about 10,000. If we are happy with 10,000, we think we have a reasonable chance of selling them, well, let's get 10,000. Even if we miss some sales opportunities, that's great. We will do the best we can do to fulfill them later on, but we already will get something that we are happy with.
I think one thing you're missing here is that their happy number is way above the thing that they're ready to risk. Like they're actually investing their money into the production
Right.
way before. It takes months to produce,
Right.
and then if it's sold, they get the payback. If it's not, well, it's not. And I think for people who are entrepreneurs and they have to invest first and then wait for the return, it's one thing. Both CGP Grey and Mike work in different kind of business. They get money ahead of something like the advertisement. Like they don't invest too much before the profit. And when an entrepreneur finds oneself in the situation that, all right, now I have to take the risk, and this risk is like substantial. It's not about like I'll be happy to sell 100,000. Like that's my happiness level. I feel scared at the level of 50,000. I can safely risk at 30,000. That's something that would not like interrupt my routine. Yes, I lose all my savings, but like I would still feel comfortable. And then I just invest for 20,000 because I would like to feel even a bit safer. And my happy number is 50, but I just go for 20 instead. It's the risk tolerance here.
Yeah, that's fair. I would not. I think that something like this is a genuinely complex problem, right? And this is why there are so many insurance companies that do exactly these things. And then there were a lot of, well, I wanted to say a lot of Nobel Prizes won on kind of figuring out different clever ways to quantify risk. And yeah, I would put my hand for that particular area, put a lot of pressure to advance mathematics and economics. So this is kind of genuinely complex problem, and it may not be 100% representative of spreadsheet mentality, but I think that there is an element of spreadsheet mentality. Can we just at some point take the plunge and just do what we believe in? What's wrong with that? Maybe the wrong is that we can lose all of our investment into the endeavor, but I guess at least we had fun along the way.
It feels as if all my examples are overlapping spreadsheet mentality, but not purely getting there. So maybe we should focus on something that you wanted actually to.
I don't know that. I think that to me that the purest example of spreadsheet mentality would be when we set kind of metric your ENPS example. We create some sort of measure, like some quantification that is a proxy for the real thing that we want to achieve. And then instead of goaling and actually going towards that real thing, we put everything on getting that specific number out there, like to the level we believe it should be.
And I think it might be happening for a few reasons. One is that you just don't know how to measure. Like maybe there is a way to measure what you'd like. You just don't know the right formula or the right questions or the right way to measure it. And I think we are again here kind of mixing up measure and quantify, because you could say that like if this happens and this happens and this happens, this is what we believe is successful. these three events by themselves would, like, if Dima says something at the next all hands meeting and I ask him this question and he answers yes 3 months from now, and then this happens, that would qualify for us as the success. And no numbers needed at all. Like that's what I was trying to do with you at your theme at first. I tried to ask you like how often, where, when, and that's not what you need. Like you need an image of what decoupling means for you, and it doesn't necessarily have to have like 6 occasions for 200 people and something. You just feel that it happened, or you don't feel it happened.
That's true. But I still think that taking that as an example, it is still useful to have that number as kind of auxiliary supporting thing that is an indicator whether things are going in the right direction or not in the right direction. Because if I just set the number share of kind of 3 things of something, I can hit this, but will I achieve my goal of kind of building better, healthier, more balanced identity for myself? Maybe not, because I shared 3 things that I don't necessarily really care about to carry that topic or carry that area for a long time. But I hit the shorter term metric.
I think it's part of a bigger mental process when the goal is substituted by milestones, because the goal is kind of far and big, and the milestones are more understandable and feasible, and you basically start focusing on them instead. And at a certain point, you just forget what was behind these milestones and you start focusing on the milestones instead of the initial goal. I can see it in strategic planning a lot. Like people would like to go to a foreign market, they pick 3 milestones, then they focus on the milestones and they forget about the market expansion at all, because they're just like opening locations and they forget like why they are opening these locations, what's the end state.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that this connects to this whole chain of results idea, because it is easier. Well, it is more like taking a step back and reversing it. It is more complicated to measure the impact of a specific action that you take. If you are interested in something bigger thing like entering foreign markets, you need to measure, quantify things that are closer to the action to just have an indication whether things are moving roughly in the direction you want to move them. But then you can kind of forget that just moving, like opening offices in XYZ new countries, is correlated with entering foreign markets, but it's not the same thing. That there has to be something else, and we need to account for that something else as well.
I think that's the feature that quite often happens when different types of people come to management. And I work with OKRs a lot. They have these massive objectives and then specific key results. And whenever it comes to sales, they like to quantify everything, like the number of leads, the number of sales, these type of clients, those type of clients, doesn't matter. But they always provide numbers. Don't remember a single OKR in sales direction that would have something quality, like this happened, or we do something in one click. While when I see engineering OKRs, they are usually quality. Like this works like this is launched, this got, like sometimes there are numbers like we got our first 1,000 or the NPS level is at a certain rate, but mostly it's what we want to do. Like what is how do we know that something happens? This happens. This system is launched. These things are merged. They focus on activity. And both ways have their own issues. Because I think that when you have only numbers or only quality metrics, you kind of lose the end goal in both. So these are like 2 kinds of the spectrum. And if you are just on the edge, you're misusing it. That's why when I hear more advanced management team forming their metrics, they usually make it more complex. Like we launch this thing and 1,000 people use it with this number. And like, yes, there is a launch. Yes, there is a definition of done. Yes, there is the number. And altogether, it makes way more sense than just any specific thing, just the launch or just 1,000 users.
I agree. Yeah, like taking a more holistic view rather than kind of focusing on just one very specific measure, because like know that one very specific measure is going to miss a lot of details, and those details can be important for what's going on and what you're trying to.
So basically what you want is in your spreadsheet, integrate the full result chain thing. So you would see the actions, you would see the outcomes, you would probably see even quality steps that have happened or haven't happened. So we were doing the spreadsheets wrong.
Well, we need more than spreadsheet, or you're right. Yeah, maybe we are doing spreadsheets, but even if you get a spreadsheet, right? When there is this approach with traffic lights, when you're evaluating options, right, and then you define what are the characteristics that we want or axes that we want to evaluate those options against, and then there would be some, like in my field of work, that would be at some point there will be, if we are debating two design approach, like system design approaches to something, inevitably there would be something like maintainability in the end. How do you measure that about hypothetical systems that you are going to build? It's difficult. It's kind of subjective. And then you put maybe maintainability cost is going to be high for one and medium for the other one. But then you have that spreadsheet with high and medium, and other columns or rows in that spreadsheet are real numbers. And I found that oftentimes people would put a lot more weight on the columns that have numbers as opposed to columns that don't have numbers in them. Like we would over-index on something that's measured.
Mm-hmm. It brings me back to a conversation with a VP of engineering that I had yesterday. And one curious thought that I got from it was that sometimes it's okay for people who work on a specific function to focus on this specific function. But then you have to have another person who can see the bigger picture and the full equation. Yes, your team is focusing on this specific part of the equation, but there should be someone in the room who can see the overall picture and remind you, like, part of what process you are, because you can't actually fully deep dive into this part that you are supposed to deep dive into. If you're always zooming out and trying to see a bigger picture, you're paralyzed then. So for different functions of the team, somebody has to keep the helicopter view and double check whether it's going the right way, whether it's working all together, where the model is functional. And then some people who are working on parts of the model and polishing a specific number, getting the lessons learned, improving the data, experimenting, and just looking at how things change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I couldn't agree more with that. Like building a holistic view and having a person sort of responsible for building that holistic view, identifying gaps in the thinking model that we are using to reason about the space, and then suggesting or working with the team to figure out ways to close those gaps is vital. And then the more so that closing of those gaps can be done in different ways. We can say that, oh, we don't know how to measure this and that there might be problems, but based on what we know, those problems are not going to be huge or insurmountable. So it's okay for us not to kind of fully quantify that part. We can move forward.
So would it be fair to say that basically the person responsible for the overall success should avoid spreadsheet mentality, while people who execute specific things can rely on spreadsheet mentality a bit more? Like they should still sometimes zoom out, but most of the time it's okay if they just focus on a specific number.
Yes. So I think maybe I would paraphrase this. It is like data-driven approach works. It's valuable. Just make sure that you're not missing some trees in the forest just because you can't measure them, and kind of still
Quantify.
talk about
Quantify.
still quantify. Well, I now figured why I'll use the word measure instead of quantify all this time, because I collected quotes, a number of quotes related to this topic, and I think that they're topical, and all of those quotes, they are talking about measurement. That's why I stuck with measuring. Let's maybe, like, we have a little bit of time before we need to close. Let's maybe go through those quotes and pass a judgment whether we agree or disagree, approve or disapprove of the idea presented by that quote. The first one would be, we all hopefully heard of, which reads as, what gets measured gets managed. I think it's still unclear whether Peter Drucker or Edwards Deming said that, and it's even not clear if any of them said something like this. But this is a wildly and widely known thing. Well, you look a little bit perplexed. Have you heard of this saying?
Yeah, I've heard of this phrase, but I think I heard it in slightly different interpretation. Like, in order to manage something, it should get managed. It should get measured.
Yeah, I think that's the meaning of it.
The way it's phrased here, what gets managed, what gets measured gets managed. I disagree.
Oh, can you elaborate?
Yeah. Because the second part doesn't really necessarily come from measurement.
Mm-hmm.
In order to manage, you have to do way more than just measure.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, I can imagine a number of cases when you can manage without measuring at all. You could still operate without the data and make the right decisions. As an example of NASA, they were stuck with the moon operation because they didn't know what the surface is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody said, like, it's going to be like in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They were operating from that decision. It was totally not measured by any means, but somebody managed it, like took the responsibility and accountability, and they moved on.
Yeah, I think I think that the common perception of this saying is close to what you said. Like, in order to manage something, you need to measure it.
That sounds a bit more reasonable, because if good management, whether good management requires measurements, yes, it totally does. Like, it's really hard to measure something effectively without any data, or qualitative or quantitative.
Yeah, I think maybe the quote is tries to be a little bit more sophisticated and poetic, rather than just straightforwardly saying, in order to manage something, you need to measure it. Okay, cool. The second one is, well, now for real, from W. Edwards Deming this time. And it says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion.
What do you think of it? Would you agree or disagree?
Think, yes, that's true. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. But I would expand it to say, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Completely. Moreover, in many cases, if you have relevant experience, your opinion is based on your experience, which is probably not quantified, but still matters.
Exactly. So, yeah, whenever you hear or see this quote being used to shame people who come with just opinion, kind of don't fall for that false impression.
Which still could be correct, especially if it's a doctor or an engineer who suggests like something really complicated and where life depends on it, and based on pure intuition, that would be probably a point of concern.
Right. Well, yeah, wherever possible, complement this with data, but don't discard opinions fully or solely on the fact of lack of data to support it.
We're getting dangerously close to licensing flat Earth society here.
No, we shouldn't. That's why this is so fascinating, because this stuff is so complicated and multifaceted, right? If there are, like, another quote, like probably my favorite quote of all time by George W. Boggs, the famous British statistician, is that it goes along the lines of, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. If in real life, in real thing, there are, I don't know, like 1,000 factors that influence what's going on, if you discard any of them, you are going to have a wrong picture of what's going on. And your success depends on whether, for this particular situation, you are choosing the right set of simplified factors to make useful judgment about this stuff. And it can be that in similar but slightly different situation, different things play bigger role, and your model is going to be entirely wrong. No, and just to make it clear, we are not licensing here by any means. We are not licensing a flat Earth thinking. The next one. We are getting there. Two more. This one is called Goodhart's Law. I should have had the name, like an explanation. Who's Goodhart? I think it's one of the management kind of professionals, something along those lines. There is a follow-up for the next episode, but the quote goes, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
I tend to agree.
Same here. I think that's the ENPS example is an example of Goodhart's law in action. Let's not forget about this one. And the last one, the longest of the four, it's from Elia Goldratt, and it goes like, tell me how you'll measure me, and then I will tell you how I will behave. This is the most common part of this quote gets tossed around quite often, and not all people know that the full kind of passage there has a second part which reads, if you measure me in an illogical way, don't complain about illogical behavior.
I would say generally agree with a number of exceptions. It feels true to people with external reference, like when they actually care about how, like, if I don't care how you measure me, I will behave the way I choose. It doesn't really matter that I have to adapt to the measurements. I think in the context of management, performance review processes, individual development plans, and all this kind of stuff, yes, or KPIs, it seems fair. But then people still don't always do that when they see the purpose or sense doing something else. And they can be successful quite often. Moreover, they get promoted quite often, like when they just ignore the KPIs and then bring the proper solutions. So like I can totally see how KPIs impact people's behavior, but I cannot say that like it's always the cause and effect.
This makes a lot of sense. I think probably what you're saying that is, if we assume that the person that is target of those measurements is entirely rational agent that is driven solely by those measurements or kind of metrics or quantified goals, then yes, they will optimize for that, and it may trigger behaviors that are not entirely expected. That's the illogical part there. But we know that humans are generally more complicated, not always rational agents, and some people in some situations, or the same people in different situations, may not exactly be bound by that ruthless rationality of just following and optimizing for a specific.
Moreover,
metric.
most KPIs change because of the pushback from the teams, because they feel that something is not going right, that we are measuring the wrong thing. And managers adapt quite often as well.
Right.
Because they see that, all right, we are measuring the wrong thing today. Let's change it.
Right. No, that's. I think that this is a great example. This probably is the better way of using measurement and metrics, because the failure mode here would be if teams push back on something, but you keep insisting on that thing. This is when you can expect something like that happening. You tell us to do that, we will do that, and you are going to regret us doing that.
I've seen this story too many times.
So those are the 4 quotes I found. For this topic, and I'm going to keep them. I kind of like them, and there are occasions where it might be useful to throw each one of them, not to spice things up, hopefully to correct things up, to steer them towards more effective course of action.
Please don't start counting how often do you use them and quantifying the...
Yes. You need to improve on the number of quotes that we can throw around, and we need to hit X quotations per week on all of them. Let's see how good we are doing.
And what's the next step after a spreadsheet? It's let's get a dashboard for that.
Yes, dashboards. Dashboards are great. That's like sometimes it can be just an automation of spreadsheet mentality.
So summing it up, data-driven approach is an approach with its pros and cons, and we should not blindly follow an approach without considering all the pros and cons. And even if we can't consider pros and cons, then if you trust something, maybe it's a good way to do it.
Yep. Not all things that can be measured are important. Not all things that are important can be measured easily, be considered. And sometimes even the data is not there. Just take courage to do something based on your beliefs or conviction.
You can add it as the 5th quote by Dima Malenko.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, okay, we need to extend our spreadsheet and the dashboard to keep track of that stuff. So maybe we will check back on this next week, or in the next couple of weeks, or something along those lines. We don't have specific quantifiable metric there, do we?
Fortunately. Good weeks.
See you soon.